And that means it's time to open it up by talking some football with former college football coach Malik Hall is back with us to chat about football once again. Malik, Merry Christmas to you. How was it?
Merry Christmas to the Mannix brothers. Christmas is good. We got snow up here in Maine. Who doesn't like a snowy Christmas?
I think everybody loves a snowy Christmas at this point.
Especially in the Northeast.
Exactly. We're certainly enjoying it, and now that we're getting close to the college football playoff, we'll get to talk about that with you. We'll leave that for later on in the segment, though. Have to start by asking about, seeing New England against Buffalo yesterday. The Bills take control of the AFC East with that victory yesterday, an undisciplined game from New England where they make a lot of mistakes, and Josh Allen needed to come up with a big one, and boy, did he.
Yes, he did. I think if you look at the game, the opening series said everything you wanted to know about the Pats. The plan is to run the ball. I think he brought out the old Navy plays. You saw 4 triple option plays, really, in their first touchdown. And so in that, it was also will be a chirpy game. And so as the game continued, I think that chirpiness from the last game, the refs kind of tried to set the line on that, and it affected the Pats in a critical way. But ultimately, I think once the Pats got down 2 possessions, again, that's the 2-possession rule I feel I have about the Patriots. And with the Bills going for 2 and they're when they were up, I think 26.
Right.
It was 20. I think they were up 10 points.
Yeah, it was 20. So. Yeah, the touchdown made it 26-14. They went for 2, and didn't get it.
To make it a 2-touchdown game. So now it gives you a perspective on how coaches are looking at a Patriots football club. And they did get the 2 points. It still came down to the last possession. And as I was looking at this game, I went back and thought, all of the Pats' losses happened like that loss. It's down to a possession or so. They do not have the playmakers yet right now to erase that possession and go win the game at the end, especially if they're not in control already. I think their defense can hold off a team, but I do not think they have the offensive weaponry to go down there and erase a lead. Even defensively, the Bills had did some things that I thought could have cost them the game. In the goal line, that underhand pitch that should have been back in the day, or a playoff Patriots team we may still see. We'll erase that and take that to the house. And so the Bills, man, are a solid squad. There's no one denying that. I think the last drive, you see Allen put that thing together like it was his job, those passes, and they did not hand the ball off. They kept the ball in his hands. And so the sporadic runs that he pulled off, the kind of crazy throws and scrambling, that's Josh Allen in a nutshell, and he was in the game to where they pulled it off. But I don't see that being the end-all, be-all last night or yesterday. I think the Pats still are involved. And, look, you get them in the playoffs, and they can keep the game on track and play their game and not have to chase it. I think they're still a hard team to beat, especially coming out of the AFC. They may not win a conference, but I still think it has to go through Bill Belichick.
Well, and if the Patriots are able to see the Bills again, especially after how we saw how aggressive the Bills were, you're not punting at all, just going for it consistently on fourth down, especially in the red zone like they did when they scored on that first drive to get the touchdown. It was 4th and 2. They got those short downs. How are the Patriots going to have to adjust if they're able to see the Bills again in this postseason? I mean, and also moving forward, because I guess any team watching this is going to watch this game, maybe try to take it as a blueprint, especially in picking apart that secondary that's been so strong this year. How are the Patriots going to have to adjust coming out of this one to not let the secondary have a game like it did? And really the defense just has to play a little bit better if they're going to want to try to find themselves later on in the playoff run.
I agree. I think the defense made the adjustments. They didn't sack Allen one time. I think the adjustments just didn't work. They started to play Juno as a spy to reroute backs and tight ends. He's their best pass rusher. So the adjustment was to kind of stop Allen from ripping off 15, 12-yard runs out of nowhere. But at that point, defensively, they were already on their heels, right? So in my mind, you get the Bills in the playoffs. How many passes did the Bills drop wide open?
Good question. It was a fair amount.
So if you ask me, we can man that up. The Pats, I say, I'm speaking from a coaching standpoint. Let's man this up. Let's make Allen make the throws, and let's make the receivers catch them. Because ultimately, all of those wide open passes were in zones. And so protect the bootleg, make Allen make throws. I think in this game, I think that was the intent. But once you're on your heels and you're behind 2 possessions, I think you're off the script. You're off game plan. So now you just got to play to win.
I know it's Damian Harris had a pretty good rushing game yesterday for New England, 18 carries, 103 yards. But do you think that team's better if they have both Harris and Ramondre Stevenson?
Yes.
I know I do.
No-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Again, in this game, the Pats still played the game they wanted to play at the end. I just think they were in a position where Max Sauce had to make more than 21 passes. Because now if he's making more than 21 passes, the ones like the tip passes that got picked, listen, I couldn't stand watching that receiver just watch the ball float either. To the caller who had that beef, touche, my friend. But at the end, they're also down a receiver. They're down 2 receivers, really. And so this team is not built to do shootouts. They are built to run the ball. You put Stevens in the game. You put Harris in the game. Let the defense get stops and not turn the ball over. They'll be fine. But they didn't have any sacks. Allen didn't have any turnovers. And he had some ill-advised throws, which in a tight game, if he had to come back and win, I'm going to go on a limb and say those are picks. It just happened. He's in position. They're ahead. So those ill-advised throws, they're coming out on top. But I could see that going completely the other way in the playoffs.
Now, here's the question I have, because getting a coach on the air, I need to hear this perspective. I know the Patriots coaching staff felt really, really upset at the picked-up flag for the late hit on Mac Jones out of bounds. As a coach, where do you come down on that? I know they felt like it only got picked up because he was a rookie. Where do you come down on that, and do you think it was a penalty?
That was a penalty. That was a penalty. I think, it's hard to win in the NFL, and that penalty resulted in the Pats getting another penalty, or them picking up that penalty resulted in a Pats penalty. Look, I'm all set for how it went down for the offensive lineman, and I'm almost certain that's not a conversation in their locker room like that because it was around the protection of Mac Sauce. But big picture, that was a penalty. But it still wouldn't have mattered because they still got themselves in position. They still had an opportunity to stop them once the ball turned. Did it hurt? Yeah, it hurt. But I don't think it was the end-all, be-all. I don't think that was why they lost the game. And look, Max Sauce is a tough kid, man. I like the kid. I really do. I think they're a year away from him being a real problem in the NFL. And the difference between his rookie year and a lot of the other rookie quarterbacks, Bill Belichick is protecting his future and being competitive now. And so I don't think any Patriot fans expected them to be Super Bowl contenders. But then again, I could be wrong. But every Pat fan expected them to be competitive, and they are. And they're in the conversation. Next year, they might be blowing people out once they get some receivers. But in the meantime, keep the game close, let the offense make mistakes, and the Bills' offense did not make the mistakes that the Pats normally come up with.
I was going to say, and to go back to your point, too, with the dropped interceptions, obviously J.C. Jackson had one that I think with 5 points. I mean, that changes the whole game. And he probably makes that one 9 out of 10 times. So, I mean, if you're a Pats fan, it was very close. But, yeah, and talking a little bit more about Mac, because I like where you're going with this. And it's one thing that I think we should look at, because before this game, you're talking about if they beat the Bills, they're probably contenders. Now, you take this step back, assuming that the Patriots, are able to at least split or get into the playoffs. It's definitely, in my opinion, exceeding expectations, if not being where you want to be for the Patriots. But if we're looking at how Mac Jones played yesterday, is that the reality of this team and what these fans should have? Because I think the expectation earlier after the win streak was maybe an AFC championship. Now after this week is realistically just getting to the playoffs and looking to next year and saying, let's get us a real number one, the way to go for the New England Patriots and their fans, and understanding that maybe this team is just a year away from contending for a real title.
I think for now, what the Pats are doing is what you can expect. But with that expectation, it's still that Bill Belichick is expected his team to execute and win. We've watched them put together game plans where the offense may have only had 2 possessions in a half or in a quarter, And so if all things go according to plan, they'll be where they want to be. But in a year from today, like you're saying, Tay, they're going to be really, really good. He'll make the necessary adjustments at the skill position, like at wideout and at DB. But at the core, they have a core team that you can hang their hat on right now, be competitive, which is 2 running backs and a quarterback who has a lot of grit to him. And grit, you get in the playoffs. I know we're going to talk about Green Bay. That's why I'm not really a Green Bay fan. How many times have we seen Rodgers lose at home? So for me, I'm still going with the Pats and the way they do business, and I still think they're a viable option and go to the bowl. But if they don't, I'm going to go Bills if they can stay hot and not in all of those magical plays we saw yesterday and those non-drop balls turn into points. Yeah, I think they have something, but I'm not a believer like that.
Speaking with Malik Hall, former football coach here on Talking Football with Malik Hall, who jumped out at you as a team who maybe now is a contender that you weren't thinking about from Week 16? Specifically, I maybe want to know about Cincinnati.
Yeah. I was going to say the Bengals. Listen, okay, the Bengals now, it is not a no-brainer for them to finish out because they still have to finish out with the Titans, right? No, they still have to finish out with the Chiefs and Browns. For whatever it's worth, those are no-brainers. Even though the Chiefs have clinched, I can see the Chiefs throwing that one away. But if they don't, they still have to beat those 2 ball clubs. The Browns, I tell you what, guys, the Browns, I like how tough the Browns played. The Baker Mayfield experience may be going the other way, and the Joe Burrow experience may be going up. His stock is just rising. The Bengals are playing. Ever since he came back, they've been ripping him off. So I like them. I love the Titans. But again, the Titans only have one game that really, in my mind, that will affect them, and that's the Dolphins. Because the Dolphins, tonight, they beat the Saints. If the Saints got a shot, why doesn't the Dolphins? And the Dolphins have to finish with the Pats, which you could argue is a meaningful game for everyone.
Well, I think that game at the end is absolutely going to be meaningful because when it comes down to it, if Miami's able to get a win tonight and then the Patriots win next week and all goes well for Miami, that game's going to be the one who gets in from that AFC North. But I want to talk a little bit more too about the NFC since we hit on that AFC. Who to you in the NFC kind of jumped out this week as a team that has a shot? I'm big on the Packers. I think we differ on that. I think the Packers are a good team once they get healthy. But who to you stands out in the NFC right now, other than, I guess, a team at number 1 in the Packers?
I got to tell you, I know we talked about the Rams a while ago. I wasn't a believer in the Cards, even though Murray is a player. I think he is a future stud, okay? But the Rams, Matthew has to still prove that he is not a Lions. He's not in Lions PTSD. Period. Because that's all I can see as a Lions fan, as someone who wants to see him do well. All I can see is Lions PTSD, and he does not have any cop-outs anymore. Right? That defense is good, but let's be honest. Is that defense going to stop Tom Brady? I don't think so. Okay? Now, Cowboys, I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I still think they have the most weapons. I think they have the team built to win. They have all of the tools. Are they playing at that level right now? No. But I also understand once you get in the playoffs, it's a different energy. It's a different season. And if they come alive, they can go, while you were gone, Tay, we talked about it, they can go to Green Bay and upset Green Bay and Lambeau Field. They can.
All right.
I think they can.
All right, let's turn to the college football playoff here now that the matchups are less than a week away. On Friday, Cincinnati against Alabama, Georgia against Michigan. Tell us your take first on Alabama, Cincinnati. First off, I'm so happy the Bearcats actually made the top four. Thank you, CFP committee, for actually putting a non-Power 5 in and giving them a chance. Do you think they have a chance to stick with Alabama, or is this going to be a blowout semifinal game where the Crimson Tide just kind of run all over the Bearcats?
You know, I think COVID is going to play a major part in that. From what I understand, I think Alabama has some major key studs who are out because of COVID. Mm-hmm. That might level the playing field, no doubt. But in that space, I still think Cincinnati, they're putting up 39, 40 points a game, okay? And they're holding their opponents to 16. Now, they haven't held Alabama or a whole bunch of SEC teams to those numbers, but they did not get here just because they had a few good games. This is what everyone wanted back in the day when Boise State was knocking off all of those big teams and they never could get in. And so I think this is what we're going to find out. Is it all worth it? Because this has been a 2-year resume. This has not just been a 1-year resume. And so in that 2-year resume, I would love to see them Bearcats stump them. I would love it. I would love it to see them beat Bama and have Roll Tide rolling home. But I don't see it, man. I just don't see it. But I do see a game that could look something like 31-21, Bama, and then I think it gets away from them late in the game in the fourth quarter.
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned, too, with Alabama and the COVID issues, college football playoff policy made new rules around this last week and basically said teams can advance to the national championship and ultimately win it by its opponents having to forfeit. According to an updated set of the COVID-19 policies with the CFP playoffs released last week. I mean, you got to think, does this almost set it right? Yeah, now we're talking about a potential forfeit if Alabama's not able to field enough players, which to me is crazy. But could you see something like that happen? Do you think that they're going to be able to at least maybe – I know also there's guys that are red-shirted. Could they potentially pull red shirts off guys to compete in these playoff-type things? I know you're a college football coach, so kind of want the coach's perspective on this.
Strategically, I think this will be a decision that Nick Saban will either make just for the standpoint of not ruining anyone's full college experience. Yes, he could pull a bunch of red shirts, and those red shirt kids could play in the game, but they would not be playbook compatible, right? So now you would have to downgrade your entire playbook for the red shirt guys who, for the most part, have been servicing the other team's playbook. So they're probably more equipped to run the opposite playbook with their red shirt and their scout team guys, though they are players. And so I could see Alabama, if they can't fill the roster, conceding and just giving it to Natty. Everyone will know that happened. Everyone will know that that's an asterisk on Cincinnati if they pull it off. But asterisks or not, it was what it was. And if it happens, I wish the best for Cincinnati against, of course, Michigan.
Well, let's turn you to that one. Since you mentioned Alabama's having some issues, so is Georgia, as they've gotten to the Orange Bowl to get ready to play against Michigan in that semifinal. I know with both rosters healthy, I've seen a few pundits say this is absolutely Michigan's game to win. I've seen a few pundits say this is absolutely Georgia's game to win. So where do you see this one coming down? Do you think this is an even football game that really either team can win, or do you think one is clearly better than the other?
No, I think this could go either way. I think you're dealing with a bruised Georgia defense, okay, and a bruised Georgia team. But, you know, one of the things that I love about the Georgia team is the defense is what makes it go. And there's no secret behind it, right? You could always argue that with Alabama because they've had some studs offensively. But that Georgia defense makes that team go. And they're coming off some bruising of ego. So if they can make it to the game, they'll be charged and ready to roll. On the other side of that, on the other sideline, I'm going to tell you, Michigan in that two-quarterback system, shout out to the old ball coach, Spurrier, who got to a bowl game doing it. And I think that two-quarterback system will keep Georgia on their heels defensively. Offensively, I think Michigan has to run the ball. I think they have to get their jumbo packs out and make Georgia earn it. So when they get ready to get the second quarterback in and let him do his magic, it's going to be worth it. That McCaffrey kid's a player. But I'm not sold on the Georgia offensive overall picture because they haven't had to do much. And when they faced Alabama last, they were exposed in not having to do much all season because if you have to put the ball on the 40-yard line, worst case, you're coming away with 3 points. And their defense has done that for them 75% of the year. And so now you're facing a team who has some turnover issues, but traditionally wants to run the ball. And if they can, if Michigan can run the ball on Georgia, it's going to be a long day for their offense because that Michigan defense gets after it.
All right, Malik, we'll break it all down with you next week. Happy New Year to you. Thanks for joining us again today.
The Mannix bros, go into the new year with the parlay. Go into the new year with the parlay. I like what Coach Coach Vitale, Dickie V. Tell him I love his parlays.
We most
keep
certainly
it
will.
local, boys.
You got it. Malik Hall, former college football coach, joining us for Talking Football with Malik Hall. We'll be right back to take your phone calls next. It is Middays with Mannix and Mannix.